My husband turned his back on me and our autistic son, unaware his son just won $50 million talent show prize money.
"It's almost over," she whispered against his ear, though her voice cracked. He turned his back on them in the courthouse, walking away while his wife clutched their autistic son. But what Henry didn't know was that Daniel had just won $50 million on national television the night before. While Henry was in a hotel room with his mistress, laughing and toasting his own escape, his son was being crowned America's newest prodigy, stunning millions with music that seemed to come from heaven itself. Now Henry thinks he can waltz back into their lives and claim what was never his. But when Shania finally reveals the truth about that lottery-sized prize money, will Henry's greed destroy the family he abandoned, or will Daniel's gift become the weapon that exposes his father's true nature? If you're enjoying this story, please hit the subscribe button, like this video and comment what time it is that you're watching this video. Now let's get back to the story. The room smelled of wood polish and tension, a courthouse that had heard too many broken promises and not enough redemption. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, but it was the silence that pressed hardest on Shania's chest. She shifted slightly, wrapping her arms tighter around Daniel. His face was buried against her, his cheek pressed into the fabric of her navy blouse, his fists locked in the folds, as though letting go might shatter him into pieces. His breaths came slow and even, but Shania could feel the storm inside him, the way his world resisted noise, resisted chaos, resisted the heat of human cruelty. And right now, Henry's back was the cruelest noise of all. Her husband, once the man she had trusted to fight beside her, stood tall at the center of the courtroom. His posture was impeccable, his suit crisp and deliberate. But he would not turn. Not to her, not to Daniel. The gavel hadn't yet fallen, but the verdict in her heart had already been carved. He had turned his back long before they walked into this room. What no one else knew. Not the judge flipping through pages of legal arguments, not the lawyers shuffling their folders, not the spectators whispering behind closed lips, was that everything had already changed. Because last night, her son had done the impossible. Daniel, her quiet, beautiful boy with the eyes that never quite looked where the world expected, had sat before a piano on the grandest stage in America. And when his fingers touched the keys, silence bloomed into something divine. The judges had risen to their feet, the crowd had screamed, millions had watched, weeping in their living rooms as Daniel poured his soul into music that seemed to come from a place beyond time. And then, against all odds, his name was called, the victor, the genius, the boy no one believed in. He had won not only their hearts, but also the staggering prize, $50 million. Shania had wanted to call Henry immediately, to see his face when he realized their son wasn't a burden but a miracle. But when the cameras panned across the arena, when her phone lit with messages, she saw the truth. Henry hadn't been in the audience. He had been in a hotel room, glass in hand, a woman who wasn't her at his side, watching not with pride but with distance. Smiling not at Daniel's triumph, but at his own escape. And now, here, in this suffocating room of laws and judgments, Henry's silence screamed louder than any gavel ever could. Shania swallowed hard. Her hand stroked the crown of Daniel's head, feeling the cropped patterns in his hair. He stirred against her chest, not looking up. He rarely did in places like this, crowded, humming with too many invisible wires of emotion. He stayed folded into her, his sanctuary. "It's almost over," she whispered against his ear, though her voice cracked. The bailiff called for order and the room straightened. Henry's lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s, stepped forward, her heels echoing like gunshots against the tile. She began to speak, but Shania barely heard her. The words dissolved into meaningless syllables. What mattered wasn't legal custody or signatures, or who would take what. What mattered was that Henry had already left them long ago. What mattered was that Daniel didn't need him anymore, but Henry didn't know that yet. The irony made Shania want to laugh, even as her throat burned. Her husband had abandoned them in his heart, thinking their son would never amount to anything, never speak, never thrive, never prove him wrong. And yet the boy sitting in her lap had just rewritten the world's expectations, winning not only money, but a place in history. When the judge cleared his throat, preparing to ask for her testimony, Shania straightened. Her knees wobbled, but her grip on Daniel tightened. She rose slowly, every motion deliberate. The room quieted. "Mrs. Jackson," the judge said, "do you wish to make a statement?" Her gaze locked on Henry's back. For a moment she almost wished he would turn, almost begged for one last glimpse of the man she thought he'd been. But he didn't. He stood there, rigid, a statue of pride and betrayal. Shania inhaled. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere fierce. "Henry," she began. Her voice sliced through the room. The lawyers shifted. The judge blinked. The air itself seemed to pause. "You've doubted him every single day of his life. You doubted me. You said he couldn't, he wouldn't, he never will. But yesterday, while you were somewhere else, he did the impossible. Our son stood on a stage, played his heart to the world and won." Henry's shoulders flinched almost imperceptibly. He didn't turn, but Shania saw the crack ripple through his polished composure. "He won $50 million, she said, letting the weight of it land like a hammer. "And he didn't need your faith to do it. He only needed mine and his own." A ripple of gasps spread through the spectators. Even the judge froze, eyebrows lifting, as if the sheer magnitude of the revelation had shifted the ground beneath his bench. Shania's heart thundered, but her voice didn't falter. "You turned your back on him, Henry. But the world turned toward him, and it will never turn away again." The silence that followed was deafening. And then, breaking it like dawn breaking darkness, Daniel lifted his head. His voice was small, fragile, but it carried across the entire room. "Mom," he whispered, "can we go home now?" Shania's eyes stung. She bent, pressing her lips to his temple. "Yes, baby, yes, we can." The judge shifted uncomfortably. The lawyers murmured. Henry stood like a man who'd been struck across the face. But none of that mattered, because Shania had her answer, because Daniel had already won. Outside, beyond these walls, the world was waiting, reporters, cameras, strangers who had wept at the sound of his music. A future Shania had once barely dared to dream of now stretched out like a sunrise. But in here, in this moment, it was simple. It was mother and son. It was survival turning into triumph. And it was Henry's back, turned forever, while they walked forward into something greater. The courthouse doors swung open, and Shania stepped into a wall of sound. Flashes burst like lightning against her face, each one followed by the metallic clatter of shutters. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust out, voices overlapping in a fevered storm of questions. "Mrs. Jackson, is it true your son just won the Rising Voices talent show? How does it feel knowing your husband wasn't there to see his own son's triumph? What will you do with the prize money?" Shania's grip tightened on Daniel's hand. He flinched at the noise, his small shoulders stiffening, his eyes squeezing shut. She bent low, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Just keep walking. We'll be out soon." But it wasn't okay. Daniel's world did not welcome chaos. Lights stabbed at him, voices battered his ears, and the heat of bodies pressing too close made him tremble. His free hand shot to his ears, covering them, his lips beginning to move in the silent rhythm she knew well. He was humming inside himself, trying to drown them out. "Back up!" a bailiff barked, shoving the crowd aside. Shania used the opening, pulling Daniel through. They spilled onto the courthouse steps, the grey sky above offering no reprieve from the storm below. And then, just at the edge of the crowd, she saw him. Henry. He wasn't looking at her. He wasn't looking at Daniel. He was flanked by his lawyer, his jaw tight, his hand tugging at the cuff of his suit. But his eyes, dark, searching, scanned the reporters as though he might wrestle control of the narrative. For a second, Shania thought he might step forward, that he might finally face his son. But instead, Henry adjusted his tie, whispered something to the lawyer, and walked swiftly toward a waiting car. The irony twisted in her chest, Henry fleeing again, while cameras swarmed Daniel, desperate for even a glimpse of the boy whose music had stopped the world. She crouched low, cupping Daniel's face. "Almost there, sweetheart. Just a few more steps." They pushed through the mob, her body a shield, until finally they reached the sanctuary of her sister's car parked across the street. Nadine sat behind the wheel, her curly hair tied up, her face etched with worry. She leaned across, flinging the door open. "Get in!" Shania ushered Daniel inside, then climbed in herself, slamming the door. The noise dimmed instantly, reduced to a dull roar behind the glass. Daniel collapsed against her side, still covering his ears, his breath shallow. "You did good," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "You did so good." Nadine's knuckles tightened on the wheel as she pulled into traffic. "Lord have mercy, Shania. The whole city's gone mad. Reporters are everywhere. I had to flash your name just to get through the barricade." Shania exhaled shakily. "It's not going to stop, Nadine. Not now. Not after last night." Nadine gave her a sharp look. "And where was Henry through all this?" Shania didn't answer. She didn't have to. Nadine clicked her tongue, muttering under her breath. "That man's a disgrace." Daniel stirred, his voice small. "Home?" "Yes, baby. Home," Shania murmured. But home would never be the same. By the time they reached the quiet neighborhood on the edge of Atlanta, the storm had followed. Vans with satellite dishes lined the street. Strangers loitered on the sidewalk, craning their necks for a glimpse. As Nadine slowed, the crowd parted reluctantly, cameras lifting, lights snapping back on. "Shania Jackson!" someone shouted. "Can we get a comment?" Nadine cursed under her breath, accelerating into the driveway. "Girl, you need security. This is no joke." Shania shielded Daniel as they hurried from the car to the house. She could feel the heat of the crowd even as the front door shut behind them, the lock clicking into place. The house was dim, quiet, blessedly still. Daniel dropped his bag and bolted for the piano in the living room. His fingers landed on the keys before Shania could even speak. The first soft notes spilled into the air, trembling but steadying like a heartbeat returning to rhythm. Music was his refuge. Shania leaned against the wall, her body sagging with exhaustion. Nadine crossed her arms, watching. "You can't do this alone anymore," Nadine said firmly. "You've got the world's eyes on you. Banks, schools, predators. And Henry. He's not going to sit back and watch 50 million slip away." The words landed heavy. Shania closed her eyes. Nadine wasn't wrong. Henry. She could still see him in that hotel room, laughing with another woman, raising a glass as though toasting his own escape. And yet now that Daniel's name was worth millions, he would come crawling back. Not for love, not for redemption, but for ownership. The thought ignited a fire in her chest. He would not take this from them. Not after everything. Her phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating insistently. She glanced at it. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Jackson?" a crisp voice said. "This is Richard Keene from the Rising Voices Executive Board. First, let me congratulate you again on Daniel's victory. The world is captivated by him. We'd like to arrange an interview tomorrow morning. Exclusive. National broadcast." Shania's stomach twisted. Cameras, lights, questions. Daniel barely survived the courthouse. An interview would be worse. He's not ready for that," she stammered. "With all respect, Ma'am, this is bigger than readiness. The world needs to see him, to hear him. This could change everything." She ended the call, her hands trembling. Nadine watched her. "What did I say?" "The wolves are circling." Shania rubbed her forehead. "I don't care about the money, Nadine. I don't care about the fame. I just want him safe." From the piano, a sudden swell of notes rose, powerful, aching, defiant. Daniel's fingers flew across the keys, his face intent, his body rocking with the rhythm. The sound filled the house, silencing everything else. Shania's throat tightened. He wasn't safe, not really, not when the world wanted to claim him. She sank onto the couch, watching him play, the music wrapping around her like a shield, and in that moment, she made a vow. She would fight for him, against Henry, against the media, against the world if she had to. Because Daniel's gift wasn't just talent. It was survival. It was truth. And she would never let anyone twist it into something ugly. But across town, Henry sat in a dim hotel room, a bottle open beside him. His lawyer's words echoed in his ears. Your son is worth millions now. If you play this right, you can reclaim everything. Custody, assets, reputation. The public loves a redemption arc. Henry stared at his reflection in the window. For years, he had dismissed Daniel, resented him, turned away from him. But $50 million was enough to rewrite history. He swirled the glass in his hand, eyes narrowing. If Shania thought she could shut him out, she was mistaken. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The morning light should have felt like peace. Instead, it spilled across the living room like a spotlight. Shania stood at the window, peeking through the blinds. Outside, the street was a circus. News vans, cameras, and strangers holding signs cluttered the sidewalk. Some signs bore Daniel's name scrawled in bright colors. Prodigy, genius, angel. Others showed photographs of him from last night, his small body dwarfed by the piano, his fingers dancing in ways the world couldn't look away from. But it wasn't just praise. Some were darker. Who controls the money? One sign read. Another, is this exploitation? Shania let the blinds snap shut, her heart thudding. Behind her, Daniel sat at the piano, his fingers sketching out a slow, tentative melody. He hadn't spoken much since the courthouse. Music was his shield, his retreat. But even the music trembled now, weighed down by the noise pressing in from beyond their walls. Mom. His voice was so soft, she almost thought she imagined it. She turned. His eyes flicked toward the window, then back to the keys. Why are they here? Her throat tightened. For Daniel to form the question meant he was struggling. Choosing words cost him energy, focus. They're here because they heard you play, she said gently, because they loved it. They want to hear you again. I don't want them here. The words stabbed through her. She crossed the room, kneeling beside him. I know, baby, and we'll keep them out. This is our house, our safe place. Nobody gets in unless we say so. His fingers hesitated, then pressed down hard on a dissonant chord. The sound hung in the air, jagged and wrong. Shania closed her eyes. Nadine entered from the kitchen, holding her coffee mug like a weapon. They're multiplying out there. I had to shove through a crowd just to get to the car last night. If you don't put up some barriers, Shania, you're going to lose control fast. I can't shut him away like some secret, Shania said, her voice rising, but I won't throw him to the wolves either. Nadine raised a brow. And what about Henry? Don't think for 1 second he's going to stay gone. Shania's hands curled into fists. He'll try, but he won't get him. Not after everything. Across town, Henry sat in a sleek hotel suite, the kind that reeked of money and cold ambition. His lawyer, Patricia Vaughan, perched on the edge of an armchair, her tablet balanced on her knee. Beside him, Simone lounged on the couch, his mistress of almost 2 years, her legs tucked beneath her, her lipstick as sharp as a blade. Patricia swiped through articles, her voice clinical. The media narrative is forming. Shania's being painted as the suffering but strong mother. You, Henry, are, how shall I put this, the absentee father who turned his back. Henry's jaw tightened. They don't know the full story. Doesn't matter, Patricia said coolly. Public perception is the story. But there's an angle here. Redemption. If we move quickly, you can shift the narrative. Reformed father. A man humbled by his mistakes, now desperate to reconnect with his son. Simone smirked. You think people are going to buy that? After he just walked out on them in court. Patricia gave her a pointed look. People buy whatever's packaged well enough. Trust me, I've salvaged worse. Henry leaned forward, rubbing his temples. I just need access to Daniel, custody, partial at least, the prize money. Patricia cut him off. Let me be clear. This isn't about custody yet, this is about optics. You need to appear to want reconciliation, not money. If you go in with dollar signs in your eyes, you'll lose before you start. Henry swallowed hard. His chest burned with resentment. For years, Daniel had been a weight around his neck, silent, distant, a constant reminder of everything in his life that hadn't gone as planned. And now, suddenly, the boy was a goldmine. Simone reached for his arm, stroking it. "Baby, listen to her. If you play this right, you're set for life, and so am I." Henry's lips thinned. He didn't like the idea of crawling back to Shania, begging for entry into the life he had walked away from. But Patricia was right. If the money was tied to Daniel, then Daniel was the key. And Henry always got what he wanted. Back at the house, Shania's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Messages from producers, journalists, strangers, offers from banks, invitations to galas. Every ring felt like an intrusion, another claw reaching for Daniel. She silenced the phone, shoving it into a drawer. Out of sight. Daniel's music rose behind her, faster now, tumbling into something wild and frantic. Shania turned, watching him. His body rocked with each note, his face strained. She moved closer, laying a hand gently on his shoulder. "Easy, baby. Breathe." He slowed, the notes stumbling to a halt. His chest rose and fell in sharp bursts. Shania guided his hand off the keys. "You don't have to play for them," she whispered. "You play for you, always for you." But her own words felt fragile, because the world wouldn't stop wanting more. That evening, Nadine returned from the store with a newspaper tucked under her arm. She slapped it onto the table. The headline screamed in bold letters, "Prodigy's father silent as son wins millions." Beneath it, a grainy photo of Henry leaving the courthouse, his back turned, while Shania held Daniel. Shania's stomach churned. Nadine folded her arms. "He's not gonna like this." "Good," Shania snapped. "Maybe the world will finally see him for who he is." But deep down, she knew Nadine was right. Henry wouldn't take humiliation quietly, and she was proven right the next morning. As Shania poured cereal for Daniel, the television flickered on. She froze mid-motion. There, on the screen, was Henry. Sitting in a polished studio, Simone just out of frame, Patricia likely feeding him lines through an earpiece. His voice was smooth, practiced, almost sorrowful. "I made mistakes," he said, his brow furrowed just enough to seem regretful. "I wasn't there when my family needed me most. But when I saw my son play, when I realized what I'd missed, it broke me. I want to make things right. I want to be a father to him. Whatever it takes." Shania's hands trembled, the bowl nearly slipping. Nadine's voice rose from the doorway. "Lord, he's already flipping the script." The reporter leaned in. "Do you think your wife will let you back into Daniel's life?" Henry's lips curved into the faintest smile. "She knows I love them both. She knows I'll fight for my family." The screen cut to footage of Daniel playing, his small hands moving like magic. The contrast was sharp, Henry's rehearsed regret beside his son's raw brilliance. Daniel looked up from the table, his spoon hovering. "Daddy?" Shania's breath caught. She forced a smile, reaching across to stroke his cheek. "Eat your breakfast, baby." But inside, her resolve hardened. Henry wasn't coming back into their lives. Not now. Not ever. The world might fall for his act. But she knew the truth. And she would fight tooth and nail to protect Daniel from him. That night, after Daniel was asleep, Shania sat on the couch with Nadine, exhaustion pressing down on her bones. The house was dark, the street outside still crawling with vans and reporters. "What if they believe him?" Shania whispered. "What if a judge believes him?" Nadine leaned forward, gripping her hand. "Then you show them the truth. You show them the nights you stayed up with Daniel when he couldn't sleep, the days you fought schools who tried to throw him out, the hours you sat by his side, guiding him through storms. You show them you." Tears blurred Shania's vision. She pressed her forehead into Nadine's shoulder. "He'll try to take him from me," she whispered. "I can feel it." Nadine's hand tightened. "Then you make sure he fails." And in that dark, trembling silence, Shania made another vow. Henry might play the part of a repentant father, but she would expose him for the coward he was. For Daniel's sake, she had no other choice. The invitation lay on the kitchen counter, heavy as a threat. Exclusive interview, national broadcast, prime-time special. The producer's voice had been honey slick on the phone. America needs to see Daniel again. Just one segment. Gentle, controlled. We'll make sure he's comfortable. But Shania had heard the hunger beneath the words. Not comfort, not care, ratings. They wanted a spectacle, not her son. Yet Nadine had argued hard. You can't keep him locked away forever, Shania. If you don't control the narrative, Henry will. You saw that interview. He's already painting himself as the victim who just wants his family back. The memory made Shania's stomach knot. Henry's rehearsed sorrow, his smooth apologies, and the world had eaten it up. Comment sections overflowed with forgiveness. Give the man another chance. A father deserves to know his son. Redemption is beautiful. She wanted to scream every time she read them. They didn't know the nights she'd carried Daniel through meltdowns, the mornings she'd gone hungry to stretch groceries, the years of Henry's absence that were louder than any words he could say now. But Nadine was right about one thing. If Shania didn't step forward, Henry would, and Daniel's story would no longer be theirs to tell. So she agreed. One interview. The studio was colder than she expected. The air conditioning turned up high to keep lights from melting the room. Bright rigs loomed overhead, glowing hot despite the chill. Cameras perched like vultures, their red recording lights blinking in rhythm with her heartbeat. Daniel sat beside her on the couch, dressed in a soft blue sweater and dark slacks. He hated suits, and she had refused to force him into one. His hands rested on his knees, fingers twitching in nervous rhythm. His eyes darted to the lights, then back down to the floor. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, smoothing his sleeve. "I'm right here." The producer crouched in front of them, his smile wide and teeth too white. "Don't worry, Mrs. Jackson. We'll keep it simple. A few soft questions, no pressure." No pressure, Shania almost laughed. Pressure was all she could feel pressing down on her, thick as a weight. The host, a tall woman in a red blazer, strode over, microphone clipped neatly to her lapel. She shook Shania's hand with polished warmth before kneeling slightly toward Daniel. "And this must be the young maestro," she said. "Daniel, it's an honor." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't look at her. His gaze stayed fixed on the floor. Shania gently squeezed his hand. "He speaks when he wants to," she said softly. The host's smile didn't falter, but Shania caught the flicker of unease in her eyes. The cameras rolled. "Welcome back, America," the host said, her voice smooth as silk. "Tonight, we have with us the story that has captured hearts across the nation, the rise of a prodigy. Young Daniel Jackson stunned the world with his breathtaking performance on the Rising Voices talent show, winning the grand prize of $50 million. Applause thundered from the studio audience. Daniel flinched, his hands clamping to his ears. Shania shifted closer, wrapping her arm around him. The host continued, unfazed. "With us tonight is Daniel and his mother, Shania Jackson, who has been by his side every step of the way." The camera swung toward Shania. She pasted on a smile, though her chest ached. "Mrs. Jackson," the host said, "tell us, what has this journey been like for you, watching your son go from a quiet boy at home to a worldwide sensation?" Shania leaned in, her voice steady. "It's been overwhelming, but beautiful. Daniel has always spoken through music. I knew from the first time he touched a piano that he had something special. Last night, the world finally heard what I've been hearing for years." Polite applause. The audience cooed. The host nodded. "And Daniel," she said gently, turning to him. "How did it feel, standing on that stage?" Daniel's fingers twitched against his knee. His lips moved, but no words came. Shania rubbed his back, whispering, "It's okay, baby. You don't have to answer." The host pressed on. "Do you like playing piano, Daniel?" A pause. Then softly, "Yes." The crowd gasped, applauding again. Shania's chest swelled. Her boy had spoken, even if it was just one word. The host's eyes gleamed with triumph, sensing a moment for the cameras. "Can you tell us why?" Daniel froze. His breathing quickened, his body tensing. The lights seemed to pulse brighter, the clapping still echoing in his ears. His hands flew up, covering his face. "Too much," he whispered. "Too loud." Shania pulled him close, shielding him. "Stop!" she snapped at the host. "He's done!" The host blinked, taken aback. The producer gestured frantically from offstage. "Keep going! We need this!" But Daniel's body shook against her. His breaths came shallow, rapid. He pressed his face into her shoulder, humming desperately. Shania rose, lifting him into her arms, though he was nearly too big now. "We're finished." The cameras kept rolling, the audience buzzing. The host tried to salvage the segment, but the image was burned into every lens. A mother carrying her overwhelmed son off stage, away from the world's hungry eyes. That night, the internet exploded. Clips of the interview spread like wildfire. Prodigy breaks down on live TV. Mother storms off stage. Comment sections filled with divided voices. Some called Shania overprotective. Others blamed the network. Some questioned whether Daniel was ready for the spotlight at all. And in the middle of it all, Henry seized his chance. He appeared on another program the next morning, his expression somber. "My heart broke watching that," he said, shaking his head. "Daniel needs stability. He needs both his parents. Shania's done her best, but it's too much for one person. I want to be there, to help him navigate this." The host leaned forward. "Do you think Shania is making the right decisions for him?" Henry hesitated, just long enough for the cameras to drink it in. "I think sometimes love can cloud judgment. She means well, but Daniel needs more than just love. He needs balance, and I can give that." Shania watched the segment on Nadine's phone, her hands shaking. "That snake," Nadine spat. "He's turning your boy's pain into a weapon." Shania could barely breathe. Henry's words weren't just criticism. They were seeds planted in the public mind. Seeds that would sprout in courtrooms, in custody hearings, in judges' ears. And the terrifying part was some people would believe him. Shania pressed her palms to her face. "I shouldn't have taken him to that interview. I put him right where they could hurt him." Nadine grabbed her shoulders. "Don't you dare blame yourself. You did what you thought was right. The problem isn't you, it's Henry." Shania's chest heaved. She looked toward the living room, where Daniel sat at the piano again, playing soft, broken fragments of melody. His safe place, his language. But even music couldn't drown out the war rising around him. And as the notes floated through the air, Shania knew with chilling certainty, Henry wasn't just circling. He was closing in. Later that night, as Daniel slept curled under his weighted blanket, Shania sat alone at the kitchen table. Papers were spread before her, offers from agents, contracts from networks, letters from schools and charities. Each one was a promise of opportunity or a trap. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut made her answer. "Mrs. Jackson," a low voice said. "You don't know me, but you need to listen carefully. Henry isn't just planning interviews. He's preparing legal action. Custody, full custody. He'll argue you're unfit, that you can't handle the pressure, that Daniel needs his father." Shania's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Her hand trembled as she set the phone down. Outside, the night was quiet. Too quiet. And for the first time, Shania felt it in her bones. This wasn't just about money or fame anymore. It was about survival. Because Henry wasn't coming for her. He was coming for Daniel. The knock came at 9 in the morning. It wasn't the polite rap of a neighbor. It was firm, deliberate, and heavy enough to rattle the glass in the front door. Shania froze halfway through pouring Daniel's cereal. The milk carton trembled in her hand. Nadine, still in her robe, stepped out of the hallway, her hair wrapped in a scarf. "That don't sound friendly," she muttered. Another knock. Louder this time, followed by a voice. "Mrs. Jackson?" "Court delivery." Shania's stomach turned to ice. She opened the door with shaking hands. A man in a grey suit stood on the porch, clipboard in hand. Behind him, cameras were already flashing, reporters shouting from the curb. "Shania Jackson?" he asked. "Yes." "You've been served." He thrust a thick envelope into her hands. "Custody petition, filed this morning. You'll want to read it carefully." Her vision blurred. She clutched the envelope as though it might burn her fingers. The man tipped his head, turned, and walked briskly to a waiting car. The cameras closed in. "Mrs. Jackson, how do you feel about the custody battle? Do you think Henry deserves visitation rights? Is Daniel safe in your care?" Shania slammed the door shut. Her breath came fast, shallow. Nadine grabbed the envelope, ripping it open with sharp fingers. She scanned the papers, her lips moving silently until she cursed under her breath. "He's asking for full custody, not partial, full." Shania's knees buckled. She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her mouth. No, he can't. "He can try," Nadine snapped. "And that's exactly what he's doing." Shania's eyes blurred with tears. She pictured Henry's polished smile on television, the way he'd said Shania's love clouds her judgment. This was his plan all along. The interview, the apology tour, the crocodile tears, it was all ammunition. Nadine dropped the papers onto the table. "He's claiming you're unfit, that you've shielded Daniel too much, that the breakdown on TV was proof he needs balanced parenting." The words hit like stones. Shania pressed her hands harder against her face, muffling a sob. From the kitchen, Daniel's small voice carried. "Mom!" She straightened instantly, swiping her cheeks. "Yes, baby?" He peeked around the corner, his spoon still in his hand. His gaze flicked to the papers on the table, then to her. "Are you sad?" Her heart cracked. She forced a smile. "No, sweetheart, just tired. Finish your cereal, okay?" He nodded, retreating, but his shoulders were tense. He knew more than people gave him credit for. Nadine sat beside her, gripping her hand. "You need a lawyer, a good one, because Henry's coming hard and he's got money and spin doctors on his side." Shania nodded numbly, staring at the papers as if they might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. 2 days later, she sat in a polished downtown office, the leather chair too stiff beneath her. Across the desk, attorney Gloria Harper adjusted her glasses and tapped the stack of documents. "I've reviewed Henry's petition. He's smart, or at least his lawyer is. They're framing this as concern for Daniel's well-being, using his autism as leverage, painting it like you're smothering him, isolating him from opportunity." Shania's hands clenched in her lap. "I've protected him. I've given him everything." "I know that," Gloria interrupted gently. "But courts don't work on what you know. They work on what you can prove. And Henry's already controlling the narrative. His media appearances are painting him as remorseful, dedicated, ready to step up." Shania's voice shook. "He's never been dedicated a day in his life." Gloria leaned forward. "Then we show that. We build a record. School reports, medical records, neighbors, teachers, anyone who can testify to who has really been there for Daniel. We make it clear. Daniel's thriving because of you, not in spite of you." Shania nodded, though her stomach still churned. "And if the judge believes him?" Gloria's gaze softened. "Then we fight harder. But understand this. Custody battles with money involved get ugly. And with $50 million on the line, Henry's going to drag you through the mud." Shania's throat tightened. She thought of Daniel at the piano, his safe space, his sanctuary. She thought of Henry barging into that world, tearing it apart with his greed. She couldn't let it happen. Meanwhile, Henry sat in another office across town, Patricia Vaughan at his side. His posture was relaxed, his smile smug. "You've made the right move," Patricia said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Full custody forces Shania to defend herself. Even if you don't win outright, it positions you for leverage. Settlement, joint custody, financial control." Henry flipped through the papers, barely glancing at the legal jargon. "The media's on my side, right?" Patricia smirked. "Public sympathy is leaning your way. Single father trying to do right by his son. The redemption angle works, but you'll need to play it carefully." No slips, no temper. Henry leaned back, satisfied. Simone, perched in the corner, grinned. "So when do we start spending that prize money?" Henry's smile widened. "Soon." At home, the days blurred into a storm. Reporters never left the street. Offers piled higher. Letters arrived from strangers, some praising, some condemning, some begging for money. Shania's phone buzzed constantly. Gloria called often, coaching her through the steps, gather records, list witnesses, keep Daniel out of the spotlight. But Henry's shadow loomed everywhere. His interviews grew bolder. He spoke of rebuilding his family, as if Shania hadn't been the one holding it together all these years. He painted himself as steady, trustworthy. And it worked. Polls popped up online. Should Henry Jackson be given custody? Too many people clicked yes. One night, Shania sat with Nadine at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. Her chest tightened with each headline. Nadine slammed her mug down. "Girl, stop torturing yourself with that. You know the truth. The people who matter will know it too." Shania's voice was hoarse. "The judge doesn't know it yet." She set the phone down, staring across the room. Daniel was curled on the couch, headphones on, his eyes closed as he listened to one of his own recordings. She whispered, almost to herself, "If Henry wins, Daniel won't survive it." The words hung heavy in the air. The first court date arrived with brutal swiftness. The courthouse was packed. Cameras lined the steps, reporters buzzing like flies. Inside, the air was thick with whispers. Shania sat at the petitioner's table with Gloria, her palms damp, her heart pounding. Across the aisle, Henry sat with Patricia, his suit immaculate, his face carefully composed in a mask of concern. He even had the nerve to look at her, as if trying to soften her with his eyes. She looked away. The judge entered, the bailiff called for order, and the case began. Patricia rose first, her voice smooth, persuasive. "Your Honor, my client Henry Jackson is here because he believes his son deserves balance, stability, and opportunity. While Mrs. Jackson has done her best, recent public incidents have demonstrated that Daniel's needs are not being fully met. The breakdown on live television was heartbreaking, but telling. He needs both parents to guide him through this unique journey, not one parent shielding him from the world." Whispers rippled through the gallery. Gloria stood, her tone firm. "Your Honor, Daniel Jackson is not a prize to be fought over. He is a child, a brilliant, sensitive child who has thrived under the care of his mother. Every report, every doctor, every teacher will confirm Shania has been his anchor, his advocate, his safe place. To suggest otherwise is not only false, it's dangerous." The judge listened, expression unreadable. Shania sat rigid, her eyes flicking to the back of the courtroom. And there, among the spectators, she saw them. Reporters scribbling notes, strangers leaning forward eager for drama. Her heart thundered. This wasn't just a custody hearing, it was a stage, and Henry was playing it to perfection. The judge called for recess. As the courtroom emptied, Henry rose slowly. For the first time since this nightmare began, he turned fully toward her. Their eyes met, and he smiled. Not warm, not kind. A smile of triumph, of certainty. Shania's blood ran cold, because in that single look, she understood. Henry wasn't here to share Daniel. He was here to take him. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the second day of hearings began. Shania sat rigid at the respondents' table, her hands gripping the edge as if holding on for dear life. Gloria leaned in, her voice low but steady. "Today's about witnesses. Don't react, no matter what Patricia throws. Let me handle it." Shania nodded, though her stomach churned. Across the aisle, Henry sat tall, his suit pressed, his tie perfectly knotted. Simone was in the gallery, her expression smug as if she already owned the outcome. The bailiff called order. The judge nodded to Patricia. "Proceed." Patricia rose smoothly, her heels clicking against the floor. "Your Honor, the petitioner calls Mrs. Evelyn Brooks to the stand." A petite woman shuffled forward, Daniel's old kindergarten teacher. Shania's chest tightened. Evelyn had always been kind, but she hadn't truly understood Daniel's world. Patricia's tone was warm, almost maternal. "Mrs. Brooks, could you tell the court about your experience with young Daniel Jackson?" Evelyn adjusted her glasses. "Well, Daniel was different. Quiet. Didn't engage much. Sometimes disruptive when the classroom got loud. His mother was very protective. Perhaps too protective." Shania's nails dug into her palms. Patricia nodded sympathetically. "Can you elaborate?" "There were times I suggested group activities, but Mrs. Jackson refused. She always said Daniel couldn't handle it. I worried he was being isolated, shielded from experiences that could have helped him." Patricia turned to the judge, her voice heavy with concern. "Your Honor, this is exactly what we mean by imbalance. Shania Jackson may mean well, but her overprotection stifles Daniel's growth." Gloria stood instantly. "Cross-examination. Mrs. Brooks, do you recall Daniel's progress after he left your classroom?" Evelyn blinked. I heard he improved." "Improved?" Gloria pressed. "He didn't just improve. He thrived. He went from a boy struggling in a noisy classroom to a boy who now commands national stages with his music. Isn't it true that Mrs. Jackson fought tirelessly to find environments where Daniel could succeed?" Evelyn faltered. "I suppose that's true." No further questions. Shania exhaled slowly, but the damage was done. Patricia had planted the seed. Overprotective mother, smothering child. The next witness was worse. Patricia called Dr. Leonard Miles, a child psychologist. Shania's heart sank. Henry had hired an expert. Dr. Miles spoke with clinical precision. "From what I've reviewed, Daniel exhibits classic signs of sensory overload, exacerbated by a lack of gradual social exposure. In my professional opinion, limiting him too much could hinder his development. Shared custody could provide balance, one parent offering structure, the other protection." Patricia's voice was velvet. "And would you say his mother's current approach might limit his potential?" Dr. Miles hesitated, then nodded. "It's possible, yes." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Shania's pulse roared in her ears. Gloria's cross-examination was sharp. "Dr. Miles, have you ever met Daniel?" "No." "Have you observed him play the piano? Have you spoken with his teachers, his doctors, his therapists?" "No." "So your opinion is based solely on documents provided by the petitioner?" "Yes." Gloria's smile was thin. "Then your opinion is incomplete at best and biased at worst. No further questions." The judge gave a slight frown, scribbling notes. But Shania could feel the weight tipping. Patricia was clever, framing every word to cast doubt. During recess, Shania sat with her head in her hands. Nadine rubbed her back, whispering fiercely, "Don't let them get in your head. They're twisting everything. You hear me? Twisting." Shania lifted her gaze, tears burning her eyes. "What if the judge believes them? What if he thinks I've been hurting Daniel by protecting him?" Nadine shook her head. "Then we show him the truth. The boy speaks for himself." Shania glanced toward Daniel, sitting quietly with his headphones humming under his breath. He looked small in the courthouse chaos, but there was strength in the way he centered himself, a strength no one seemed to notice but her. The afternoon brought Shania's turn. Gloria called her to the stand. Her knees trembled as she swore the oath, sitting in the stiff wooden chair, every eye fixed on her. Gloria began gently. "Mrs. Jackson, can you tell the court about Daniel's journey?" Shania swallowed hard, her voice breaking at first. "Daniel, he was always different, but not broken. People said he couldn't learn, couldn't thrive. But I saw something in him. When he touched a piano, he came alive. That's how he talks to the world, through music." She paused, blinking back tears. "And I've fought for him every step. Schools wanted to give up on him. Doctors said to lower expectations. Even Henry." Her voice faltered. She steadied herself. "But I never gave up. I created a world where he could succeed. And he did. He's not just surviving, he's shining, because he knows I believe in him." Murmurs of sympathy stirred in the gallery. The judge watched closely, his expression softer now. Gloria smiled. No further questions. Patricia rose, her eyes sharp. Mrs. Jackson, isn't it true you pulled Daniel out of multiple schools because he couldn't cope? Yes, Shania admitted. And isn't it true that you refused opportunities for him to socialize with peers? I didn't refuse, Shania said firmly. I chose what was safe, what was right for him. Patricia's voice dripped with skepticism. Or what was easier for you? The words sliced deep. Shania's breath caught. No, it was never easy, but it was right. Patricia leaned closer. Mrs. Jackson, do you truly believe keeping Daniel in a bubble is preparing him for the real world? Shania lifted her chin. I believe giving him love, stability, and space to grow is the only way he'll survive the real world. The courtroom went quiet. For once, Patricia had no retort. That evening, back at the house, the air was thick with tension. Shania sat at the piano bench beside Daniel. He was playing softly, his notes halting, uncertain. Did I do good today? She whispered, more to herself than to him. Daniel didn't answer right away. His fingers drifted across the keys, weaving a melody that started hesitant but grew stronger, fuller, brighter. Shania listened, her chest tightening. When he finished, Daniel looked at her, his eyes steady. Safe. The single word broke her. Tears slid down her cheeks as she pulled him into her arms. He had spoken not just with his music, but with his voice, and he had told her exactly what she needed to hear. She wasn't smothering him. She was keeping him safe. But Henry wasn't finished. Late that night, as Shania tucked Daniel into bed, Nadine barged into the living room, her phone clutched in her hand. Her face was pale with fury. You need to see this. She shoved the phone towards Shania. On the screen was a new video, Henry standing outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around him. My son deserves more than a bubble, Henry said, his voice grave. He deserves a future where he can grow, adapt, and live a normal life. I respect what Shania's done, but love isn't enough. I won't stand by while she holds him back. I'll fight with everything I have to give him the life he deserves. The clip ended. The headlines blared. Henry Jackson vows to win custody at any cost. Shania's heart pounded. Her reflection in the darkened window stared back at her, pale and shaken. Henry wasn't just using the courts. He was using the entire world as his courtroom. And the war for Daniel's future was only just beginning. By the third week, the battle wasn't just in court. It was everywhere. Billboards across Atlanta carried Daniel's face. Some put up by the talent show, celebrating their champion. Others bore Henry's image, hand in hand with slogans about family, redemption, and second chances. Social media was worse. Clips of Shania carrying Daniel off stage during the disastrous interview had been replayed millions of times, dissected like evidence in a trial for the world to judge. Hashtags trended daily. Let Daniel shine. Justice for Henry. Protect Daniel. Shania tried not to look, but every time she did, her heart sank deeper. The world wasn't divided neatly. Some supported her, praising her as a devoted mother, but others accused her of smothering Daniel, hoarding the prize money, using his condition to control him. Henry's words had sunk their hooks into the public. Love isn't enough. And now, as she walked into the courthouse again, Shania felt the stares, the whispers. People weren't just watching, they were choosing sides. Inside, the judge called the room to order. Patricia rose with a gleam in her eye. Your Honor, she said, the petitioner requests permission for Daniel Jackson himself to testify. Briefly, just a few questions to help the court understand his well-being. Shania's heart slammed against her ribs. She half rose from her chair. No. Gloria laid a hand on her arm, whispering, Stay calm. Then, louder. Your Honor, this is unacceptable. Daniel is a child with unique needs. Forcing him into testimony would be traumatizing and unnecessary. Patricia's tone dripped with false sympathy. With respect, we believe Daniel's voice deserves to be heard. Isn't that what this is about? His voice? His chance to tell the court how he feels? The gallery murmured in agreement. The judge frowned, steepling his fingers. We will allow a limited testimony. Questions will be brief and carefully monitored. Bailiff, bring the child forward. Shania's body trembled as Daniel was gently guided to the stand. He clutched his noise-cancelling headphones in one hand, his other hand twitching nervously. His eyes darted around the room, wide and frightened. Baby, Shania whispered as he passed. Just breathe. Just be you. He nodded once, small and tight. The bailiff swore him in, his tiny voice barely audible as he agreed. Patricia approached first, her smile warm but predatory. Hello, Daniel. My name is Patricia. I just want to ask you a couple of questions, okay? Daniel didn't look at her. He stared at the microphone in front of him, fingers tapping the edge of the chair. Do you like playing piano? Patricia asked. Daniel nodded once. And do you enjoy when people listen to your music? A pause, his lips parted. Sometimes. Patricia tilted her head. Sometimes? Can you tell us when you don't enjoy it? Daniel's fingers stilled. His eyes flicked toward Shania, then down again. When it's loud. Patricia's smile widened. When it's loud. Like on television. Gloria shot to her feet. Objection, leading the witness. The judge raised a hand. Sustained. Rephrase. Patricia's tone softened further. Do you remember when you were on TV, Daniel? Daniel's face scrunched. Too many people. And what did your mum do then? She carried me. Patricia turned smoothly to the judge. Your Honor, I submit that this demonstrates Mrs. Jackson's tendency to remove Daniel from challenges instead of helping him adapt. Shania's breath caught. Gloria rose immediately. Permission to redirect, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Gloria approached the stand, her voice gentle. Hi, Daniel, I'm Gloria. Can you tell me what music means to you? Daniel's eyes lit faintly. His fingers twitched against the chair again. Safe. Safe? He nodded. Music is safe. It talks for me. And who helps you make that music safe? Daniel glanced toward his mother. Mum? Gloria smiled. And how do you feel when you're with her? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Safe. The gallery went silent. Shania's eyes filled with tears. Gloria bowed her head slightly. No further questions. The judge called for recess. During the break, Shania knelt beside Daniel in the quiet conference room. He clung to her, burying his face into her shoulder. You did perfect, she whispered, stroking his hair. So perfect. He shook his head. Don't like it. I know. And you don't have to do it again. Ever. But deep inside, Shania knew Henry would try. That small moment, her boy whispering safe, was powerful, but Patricia would twist it just like everything else. And twist it she did. That evening, a clip of Daniel's testimony leaked online. But it wasn't the part where he said music was safe, or where he said his mother made him feel safe. It was the snippet Patricia wanted. Too many people. She carried me. The headlines exploded. Daniel Jackson admits mother shields him from challenges. Is Shania holding back her son's potential? Shania sat on the couch, the TV flickering with endless commentary. Pundits debated her parenting like it was sport. Neighbors texted her with sympathy, others with veiled judgment. Nadine paced the room like a caged lion. They cut it. They chopped it to fit their lie. Shania pressed her hands to her temples. It doesn't matter what he really said, they'll only hear what they want to. Daniel sat at the piano, pounding the keys in harsh, discordant bursts. His body rocked back and forth, his face twisted in frustration. Shania rushed to him, crouching low. Hey, slow down, talk to me. He slammed his palms onto the keys, the crash reverberating. They don't listen. The words rang out raw and desperate. Shania froze. Daniel rarely spoke so much in one breath. He looked at her, eyes blazing. They don't listen, Mom. Her throat tightened. She pulled him into her arms, holding him tight. I know, baby, I know, but I'm listening. Always. Meanwhile, across the city, Henry watched the edited clip play on the news with a satisfied smirk. Simone poured him a drink, draping herself across the couch. You've got them right where you want them, she purred. Patricia, seated across the room, gave a sharp nod. Public opinion is shifting. The judge will feel that pressure. We just need to keep the narrative consistent. Shania's love is suffocating. Your love is liberating. Henry chuckled, swirling his glass. Liberating, I like that. Simone kissed his cheek. Soon as you get that boy, we're set for life. Patricia's eyes glinted. Just remember, Henry, don't slip. One wrong move and this whole story collapses. But Henry wasn't listening. He was too busy imagining the prize, Daniel, and everything that came with him. Back at home, Shania sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the custody papers. Her mind raced with fears, losing Daniel, the world twisting against her, Henry's smug smile. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but then she answered. A voice whispered, He's not just going for custody, he's digging for dirt. He'll use anything, your past, your finances, your mistakes. Watch your back. The line clicked dead. Shania dropped the phone, her chest heaving. The suspense pressed in like a storm. Henry wasn't just fighting her in court. He was coming for her life, her history, her soul. And she knew, one wrong move, and she could lose everything. The attack came quietly at first, like a snake slithering through the grass. One morning, Nadine shoved a folded newspaper across the breakfast table. You're not going to like this. Shania hesitated before opening it. The headline blared in bold. Financial irregularities in Shania Jackson's past raise questions in custody battle. Her chest went tight. She scanned the article, her stomach twisting. Unpaid bills, late rent, a credit card in collections. Years of financial struggle laid bare like a weapon. The piece was written with sharp cruelty, painting her not as a devoted mother who scraped by for her son, but as reckless, irresponsible, unfit. Henry, she whispered, her voice cracking. Of course it's Henry, Nadine snapped, or that snake Patricia. They dug through your past, spun it into dirt. It's all a smear campaign. Shania's vision blurred. Yes, she'd struggled. Yes, she'd fallen behind. But she had fought tooth and nail, to keep food on the table, to keep Daniel safe, to keep the lights on, while Henry had vanished into his mistress's arms. And now those scars were being paraded as evidence against her. From the couch, Daniel's voice piped up softly. Mom? She turned. He was sitting with his headphones, but his eyes lingered on the newspaper. Are they mad at you? Her throat tightened. She forced a smile. No, baby. They're just confused. But inside she knew the truth. They weren't confused. They were being fed a story. And Henry was the author. In court, Patricia wielded the article like a blade. Your Honor, she said smoothly, the respondent's financial instability raises concerns. Can a mother with such a history responsibly manage a sudden windfall of $50 million? Can she ensure Daniel's future is secure? Gloria rose sharply. Objection. This is irrelevant and prejudicial. Mrs. Jackson's past struggles do not equate to present unfitness. Patricia arched a brow. But patterns matter, Your Honor, and patterns of mismanagement can't be ignored. The judge frowned, scribbling notes. Shania's stomach twisted tighter. Every nod, every pen stroke felt like a step toward losing Daniel. When court adjourned, she sat in the quiet hallway, staring at her trembling hands. Nadine crouched beside her, gripping her arm. Listen to me. This ain't the end. You hear? This ain't the end. But Shania's heart whispered otherwise. That night, the weight of it pressed too hard. Shania sat at the piano, her hands limp on her lap. The silence in the house was suffocating. Daniel shuffled into the room, his small fingers trailing the wall as he came closer. He climbed onto the bench beside her without a word. For a long moment, they sat together in silence. Then Daniel placed his hands on the keys. The first notes were tentative, fragile. But slowly, the melody took shape, soft, aching, full of pauses that felt like sobs. Shania's chest ached as the music spoke for him. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't anger. It was truth. Raw, trembling truth. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks, because she understood what he was saying. I feel it too. I know you're hurting. But we're still here. When the final note faded, Daniel looked up at her. Safe, he whispered. Her heart broke open. She cupped his face, pressing her forehead to his. Always safe. Always. The next day, Daniel's music became something bigger. Gloria had suggested a closed hearing demonstration, something unprecedented but possible. A way for the court to see Daniel's truth without forcing him through more words. It's risky, Gloria warned, but it could show the judge what no testimony or report ever could. Shania hesitated. She wanted to shield him from every spotlight. But Daniel himself had chosen the piano the night before. He had spoken through it. Maybe this was the only way to cut through Henry's lies. And so, on the fourth day of hearings, the judge allowed it. The courtroom was hushed, reporters locked out, only the essential parties present. A piano had been wheeled into the corner. Daniel approached slowly, headphones around his neck, his steps small but steady. Shania's heart pounded as she watched him climb onto the bench. For a moment, he just sat there, his hands hovering above the keys. The silence was so deep, every breath in the room felt amplified. Then he began. The melody was soft at first, barely a whisper. Notes like raindrops, fragile but clear. Then it grew, threads weaving together into something aching and beautiful. The room seemed to shift. The stern judge's face softened. Even Patricia, mid-note-taking, stilled her pen. Daniel's music carried everything Shania couldn't put into words. His struggles, his storms, his moments of peace in the safety of his mother's arms. It was love, laid bare in chords and progressions no one could deny. And then, just when the melody soared, it broke into discord. Sharp, clashing notes, chaotic and overwhelming. The courtroom winced at the sound. Shania's breath caught, because this was the part of Daniel's truth too. The overload, the panic, the world too loud and too much. But slowly, carefully, the discord faded. The melody returned, gentler, steadier. A mother's hand guiding him back. A safe place. The final note lingered, vibrating through the silent room. When Daniel lifted his hands, the hush was absolute. Then softly, he spoke. Safe. Shania's tears spilled freely. The judge leaned forward, his voice unusually gentle. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel nodded, sliding off the bench and walking straight to Shania. He climbed into her lap, curling against her chest. The moment was undeniable. No lawyer could twist it. No article could smear it. The truth had been played, and everyone in that room had heard it, but Henry wasn't moved. As the recess bell rang, he cornered Patricia in the hallway, his face tight with fury. That stunt! That performance! Patricia cut him off. That performance swayed the judge. Don't underestimate it. Henry's jaw clenched. Then we need something bigger. If music's her weapon, we'll find something to cut it down. Dig deeper. Find every flaw, every mistake. There has to be something in her past we can use to shatter her. Patricia hesitated, then nodded. If we go that route, there's no turning back. It'll get ugly. Henry's eyes hardened. Then let it get ugly. I'm not losing. That evening, back at the house, Shania tucked Daniel into bed, his hands still twitching softly as though replaying the melody in his dreams. She kissed his forehead, whispering, You saved us today, baby. You don't even know it, but you did. But her chest was still tight with fear, because Henry wasn't giving up. She could see it in his eyes, and she knew. His next move would be darker than anything yet. The final day of hearings dawned grey and heavy, as if the sky itself braced for judgment. Shania dressed Daniel in his soft blue sweater, the one he'd worn for the interview weeks ago. He clung to his headphones, his eyes wary but calm. She kissed the top of his head, whispering, "We're almost done, baby, just one more day." Nadine drove them, her hands tight on the wheel. "You ready for war?" Shania exhaled slowly. "I've been ready since the day he walked out on us." The courtroom brimmed with tension. Reporters were packed outside, their muffled shouts echoing even through the thick walls. Inside, the gallery buzzed with anticipation. The judge entered, face grave. "We reconvene in the matter of custody for Daniel Jackson." Final arguments. Patricia rose first, her voice smooth as always. "Your Honor, this case is not about punishment. It's not about the mistakes of the past. It's about the future of a gifted child who needs balance, opportunity, and both parents. While Mrs. Jackson's devotion is unquestioned, devotion alone does not prepare a child for life. She shields him, isolates him, and denies him the chance to adapt. Mr. Jackson seeks only to provide what Daniel has lacked: structure, stability, and exposure to the wider world." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "This isn't about money. It's about love, and love means letting go enough for growth." The gallery murmured in approval. Henry leaned back, smug satisfaction radiating from his posture. Then Gloria rose. "Your Honor," she said, her voice firm, "this case is about love, but not the hollow words of a man who abandoned his family only to return when fortune appeared. It's about the daily, relentless, often invisible labor of love that has kept Daniel alive, thriving, and safe." She turned, gesturing toward Shania. "Mrs. Jackson has not smothered her son. She has fought for him. She has carried him when others dropped him. She has listened when others dismissed him. And when the world turned its back, when Henry Jackson turned his back, she turned toward her son." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "Daniel is not a prize. He is not $50 million. He is a child who spoke for himself in this very courtroom, a child who told us where he feels safe. And that answer was not ambiguous. It was not coached, it was clear." Her voice rang. "Safe with his mother." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned back, his lips pursed in thought. Patricia wasn't done. She stood again, her tone sharp. "Your Honor, may I introduce new evidence?" The judge frowned. "This late?" Patricia nodded. "It is relevant and critical." She produced a folder, sliding it onto the bench. Records of Mrs. Jackson's past financial instability, late payments, debt collections, evidence of poor management. With $50 million now at stake, is it wise to entrust such sums, and Daniel's future, to someone with such a history? Gasps rippled through the gallery. Henry's smirk deepened. Shania's chest tightened, her face burned with humiliation as the whispers swelled. But before Gloria could rise, Shania stood. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "May I speak?" The judge hesitated, then nodded. Briefly. Shania turned, facing the courtroom. "Yes, I struggled. I fell behind. I borrowed. I begged. I prayed just to keep the lights on. But do you know why?" Her voice cracked, then strengthened. "Because I was raising Daniel alone. Because his father left us. Because I chose to put food on the table instead of paying a bill on time. Because every cent I had went to keeping my son safe, fed, clothed, and cared for. I went without meals so he wouldn't. I worked nights so he could have mornings. I sacrificed everything so he could have something." Her eyes blazed. "And if that makes me unfit, then so be it. But I'll tell you what it really makes me. A mother who refused to give up." The gallery was hushed. Even Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. Daniel shifted in his seat, then suddenly rose. He walked to the piano in the corner without a word. Shania froze. "Baby." But he was already seated, his small hands hovering over the keys. The judge raised a brow. "Proceed." And Daniel began to play. This time the melody was fierce. It started low, dark, trembling with storm. Notes clashed like thunder, pounded like fists. The courtroom seemed to vibrate with it, every ear locked on the sound. Then it shifted, softer, higher. Fragile notes breaking through like sunlight, threads of hope weaving into the chaos. Shania's tears spilled freely as she realized what he was saying. I know the storm, but I also know the light. And then came the final refrain, a steady, grounding rhythm, a mother's hand, a safe place, a home. The last note lingered, haunting and beautiful. Silence engulfed the room. Then Daniel turned on the bench, his voice small but clear. I want Mom. The words hit like a hammer. Shania's chest broke. She covered her mouth, sobbing. Nadine gripped her shoulder, shaking with silent joy. Even the judge's eyes glistened faintly. Henry's face, however, drained of colour. His jaw clenched, his hands gripping the table so hard his knuckles whitened. Patricia leaned toward him, hissing, "Control yourself." But it was too late. Henry exploded. He shot to his feet, pointing at Shania. She coached him. She put those words in his mouth. This is manipulation, pure and simple. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Mr. Jackson, sit down." But Henry didn't stop. His voice rose, wild with desperation. You think she's some saint? She's broke, she's weak, she's been dragging him down since the day he was born. You give her custody, you'll ruin him. Gasps filled the courtroom. Simone shrank in her seat, her face pale. The judge slammed the gavel again. Order! Order! Henry's voice broke, rage spilling. I won't let her win, I won't... Two bailiffs seized him, forcing him back into his seat, his face twisted with fury, his mask of calm utterly shattered. Patricia buried her face in her hands. The gallery buzzed like a hive. The judge's voice cut through. I have heard enough. The final ruling came swift, decisive, and unshakable. Daniel Jackson will remain in the sole custody of his mother, Shania Jackson. Mr. Henry Jackson's petition for full custody is denied. Furthermore, due to his outburst and demonstrated instability, visitation will be limited and supervised until further review. Shania gasped, tears streaming. Nadine whooped softly, clutching her hand. Daniel leaned against her side, whispering, Safe. She pressed her lips to his hair, sobbing with relief. Henry slumped in his chair, defeated. His eyes burned with hate, but the damage was done. The world had seen him, not the reformed father, not the man of redemption, but the coward and manipulator he truly was. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. Mrs. Jackson, how do you feel? Shania, what's next for you and Daniel? Shania held her son's hand tight, her voice steady despite the tears. We're going home. That's all that matters. The crowd cheered, reporters shouted, headlines would blare. But for Shania, the noise was far away, because Daniel was beside her, safe, free, hers. That night, as the house grew quiet again, Shania sat by Daniel's bed, watching him sleep. His hands twitched faintly, as though still playing invisible keys. She whispered, You saved us, baby. You saved us both. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to breathe. Henry had turned his back. But Daniel had turned to the world, and the world had finally turned toward him. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.